He had 7 days to create life, not to sign a deal, not to save the company through a merger, but to bring a new life into this world with a woman who had never given herself to anyone. A virgin, at least that's what the will said. A single sentence that would haunt Elias Morgan from the moment he opened the envelope his late mother had left behind. It was the kind of clause that felt like a joke or a trap, maybe both. The letter arrived sealed in a cream envelope, thick and elegant with the family crest pressed into the wax. He left it unopened on the counter for 3 days. He knew what it was. His mother had been sick for over a year, and when she finally passed, she made sure the aftermath would be anything but simple. Elias lived alone on the edge of Jackson Hole, Wyoming. His modern glass-walled house sat surrounded by pines and silence. It was where he ran BioKind, his medical research company, that specialized in gene therapy for newborns. The company had been her dream and his life's work. It had taken over 20 years of sacrifice to build it. He thought the worst was over, until the will. He stood in the kitchen, letter in hand, half-dressed in yesterday's clothes. The air outside was frozen and inside colder still. He read the clause once, then again. To maintain full ownership of BioKind, Elias Morgan must father a child with a virgin voluntarily within 7 days of reading this document. No artificial insemination, no coercion, no surrogates, no financial agreements, only proof of conception and consent. It was absurd, almost medieval, yet he knew his mother well enough to understand there was more beneath the surface. She had always spoken in layers. Words had meaning. Symbols had power. He wanted to throw the letter in the fire, but the ache in his chest told him he couldn't. This wasn't about control. This was her final test. He stared out the tall windows of his kitchen as snow began to fall again. The peaks in the distance were sharp and white, like broken porcelain. He had been here for months, away from the city, away from people. He liked it that way. No one asked questions. No one looked too close. But now everything was different. 7 days. He could lose everything, the labs, the trials, the team of brilliant minds working to end genetic diseases in children. The dream his mother had fought for as a single mother, studying and scrubbing floors at night, to fund the company in its earliest days. He hadn't cried at her funeral. He hadn't cried since he was 12. But now he felt something raw, twisting inside him. He poured himself a black coffee and stared at the fireplace without lighting it. Cold was better. He needed the sting. He needed to think. Find a virgin, get her to agree. Hope for a miracle, all in a week. It was the kind of thing that would make headlines if it ever got out. Elias Morgan, millionaire scientist, reduced to chasing purity in a countdown to keep his empire. And yet beneath the panic, something else flickered. A question. Why had she used that word? He walked to her old study, untouched since she died, and pulled a book from her shelf. Philosophy. Ancient cultures. He flipped through her handwritten notes, and one phrase circled in pencil caught his eye. Virginity is not absence. It is unspoiled intention. It is love freely given. He dropped into the chair beside the fire and let that sentence hang in the silence. Maybe this wasn't a test of biology. Maybe it was a test of the heart. 7 days. Not to find a woman untouched, but a woman who would choose him. Not out of desperation, not out of convenience, but out of something else. And if she existed, he had no idea where to start. Elias Morgan didn't believe in fate. He believed in sequencing and data in precise control of variables. But sitting alone in his mountain house, faced with an impossible demand from a woman who was no longer alive to explain herself, he felt more like a character in someone else's story than a man steering his own. The next morning, he drove to the BioKind greenhouse, one of the company's quieter off-site facilities, hidden among the forested ridges of Jackson Hole. The glass dome was used mostly for early-stage environmental testing on plant-based gene correction methods. Not many people came here. It was quiet, scientific, undisturbed, just the way he liked it. He hadn't planned on anyone new being assigned there. So when he walked in and saw a young woman crouched beside one of the tables, her sleeves rolled up, tending to a row of fragile seedlings, he froze. She didn't see him at first. Her attention was focused on a single sprout, weak and yellowing. She spoke to it softly, more to herself than to anyone else. "You're not dying," she said under her breath. "You're adjusting. Give it one more day." Elias cleared his throat. She turned startled, but not embarrassed. Her eyes were a kind of green that didn't exist in catalogs. Her face was plain, fresh grounded. No makeup, no pretense. "Sorry," she said, standing. "Didn't hear you come in? I was told this unit was inactive." "It is," Elias replied. "I'm Elias Morgan." Her eyes widened just a little. The Elias Morgan, unfortunately. "I'm Rowan Hale," she said, offering a hand, still speckled with soil. "I just got assigned here, part-time." "They said you needed someone who understood cross-species propagation and low-temp cultivation." Elias raised an eyebrow. "You're not a botanist." "No," she said. "But I studied genetics before. I had to pause school. Plants are more forgiving. They don't need tuition." He wasn't sure why, but the answer disarmed him. She was young, early 20s, but not naive. There was a quiet confidence to her. She didn't flirt. She didn't posture. She returned to her work with a sort of reverent attention that reminded Elias of his mother. "You talk to the plants," he said. "Does that help, not them?" Rowan said. "Me? Talking reminds me they're alive, not projects, living things." That evening, Elias watched her from the main window of the observation deck. She stayed 2 hours after her shift cataloging progress by hand, even though she could have used the scanner. No one had told her to do it. She simply did. The next day, he invited her to stay for tea. She accepted. They spoke for 30 minutes, then an hour, then 2. Rowan talked about her life in fragments. Her father died when she was 8. Her mother worked as a nurse. She had one sister. She had wanted to be a pediatric geneticist. But dreams don't pay rent, she added lightly. Elias found himself speaking more than he expected. About his mother, about how he built BioKind after she sacrificed everything, about how she used to say, "Some things you build with tools, others with trust." Rowan nodded as if she understood something deeper than his words. She never asked about his money, never mentioned his status. She only asked questions that revealed who he was beneath all that. "Do you ever get lonely?" she asked one night. He paused, surprised by the simplicity. "I'm used to being alone," he said. "That's not the same." She was right, but he didn't know how to admit it. Over the next 2 days, Elias noticed small things. Rowan never brought a phone into the lab. She always tied her hair back before working. She hummed when she cleaned. He noticed, too, how she looked at the world like it was still capable of surprising her. Even when it failed her, she kept showing up. And though he hadn't meant to, Elias started to hope she might see him the same way. Elias didn't know the exact moment he began to plan his day around Rowan Hale's presence. It started subtly, a delayed arrival to the lab so he could walk in just after she did. A break rescheduled so he could offer her tea at the same time. A casual reason to ask about her notes or her theories, even if he already had the answers. What disturbed him wasn't how often he thought of her. It was how peaceful it made him feel. He was not a man given to sentiment. But when she laughed at something quiet and meaningless, something bloomed in his chest that made him forget why he ever built walls in the first place. She didn't know about the will. He hadn't told her. Every day he waited made the truth heavier until it pressed on his lungs like a storm. Day 3 arrived. He was no closer to solving the impossible demand. His assistant called with updates from the board. They were circling like vultures. Rumors had started about the clause. Someone had leaked a line of the will, but not the full story. The press is speculating about a forced heir, his legal counsel said. You have 4 days. Then Evermed moves in. He ended the call and sat in silence. He couldn't do it. Not like this. He couldn't manipulate Rowan, couldn't look into her eyes and lie. Not when she looked at him like he was more than numbers and patents. That afternoon, Rowan brought him a folder with a hand-drawn chart of the greenhouse's current seedling survival rates. He flipped through the pages, slowly pretending to study, while trying not to look at her lips when she smiled. You do all this by hand, he asked. It helps me focus, she replied. Digital results feel too clean. Plants are messy. Life is messy. You don't strike me as someone who likes mess. She tilted her head. There's a difference between avoiding chaos and appreciating imperfection. He stared at her, and for a moment, she didn't look away. You see things I don't, he said. And you hide things, she replied, but I don't think it's to deceive. I think it's to survive. He almost told her then, but the words failed. The next morning he woke to an email from an old college acquaintance, Marlene. Tall, polished, always ambitious. She had heard about the will. She offered to help. For a price. I'm still a virgin, she wrote, and I know how to be discreet. A child for a controlling share. We both win. Elias stared at the message in horror. It was everything his mother would have hated. A transaction, a shortcut. He deleted it. He couldn't bring life into the world like that. He didn't want a deal. He wanted something real. Day 4 slipped away. Rowan found him in the greenhouse, sitting alone beside the dormant apple trees. You look like you lost something, she said. Maybe I did, he answered. Or maybe I never had it to begin with. She sat beside him. The air between them felt fragile, charged. Do you believe people can change? He asked. Only if they want something different more than they fear the cost. And what if it's too late? Then they stop surviving and start choosing. He looked at her, and for the first time he allowed himself to wonder what her skin would feel like against his. Not as an answer to a problem, but as the beginning of something sacred. That night he dreamed of her, not in heat or desperation, but in stillness, in safety. He woke with her name on his lips. Day 5. Rowan arrived wearing a sweater that belonged in a poetry book, cream-colored, soft, slightly oversized. She looked like a story. He wanted to read every chapter. She brought him coffee. He forgot how to thank her. You're quiet today, she said. I'm thinking. Dangerous habit. Rowan, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Are you... He hesitated. Have you ever been with someone? She didn't flinch. No, by choice, always. Why? Because I haven't found someone who makes me feel safe enough to say yes. He swallowed. And if you did, then I wouldn't wait another minute. She looked up at him with eyes so steady, he felt himself unravel. Why are you asking? He stood up too quickly. No reason, just curiosity. She nodded, but something shifted between them. That evening he avoided her. He stayed in the office past midnight, staring at his mother's old journals, desperate for clarity. He flipped through a page she had underlined in blue. A virgin is not defined by what has never happened. She is defined by what she has never surrendered out of fear. He closed the book. He knew what he had to do. Day 6 dawned gray and sharp. The house felt like a courtroom. He brewed tea and waited. At 10:30, Rowan knocked gently on his door. He opened it and stepped aside. She walked in calm as ever. I know, she said. About the will. He froze. How you talk in your sleep. And I read lips. She smiled. It wasn't hard. He felt shame crawl up his spine. Rowan. I'm sorry. I never meant to pull you into this. You didn't. She moved closer. I came willingly. But you don't owe me anything. This whole thing, it's insane. Elias, she said softly, do you think I've spent my life waiting for a man to make me feel seen? Just to run when he finally does. He blinked. I don't know what to say. Say nothing, just listen. She took his hand. Her fingers were cold, her voice steady. I've never given myself to anyone because I didn't want the first time to be an accident. I wanted it to be a choice, my choice. And now I'm choosing you. Not because of the company, not because of your name, but because when I'm with you, I'm not afraid of who I become. I don't deserve you. Maybe not. But love isn't about deserving. It's about showing up when it matters. She leaned in. Their foreheads touched. His breath caught. I don't want to hurt you, he whispered. Then don't. Her lips met his. Soft, intentional, without rush, without doubt. That night, Elias didn't mark a task off a list. He didn't track progress or control outcomes. He held her, and for the first time in years, he let himself believe he was capable of being loved. The morning after was quieter than Elias expected. He didn't wake up to panic or guilt or the cold clutch of regret. He woke to Rowan's head resting against his shoulder, her breath steady, her hair fanned across the pillow like wild silk. Outside, the snow had stopped falling, but inside something had settled, a different kind of stillness. He didn't move, didn't speak, just watched her sleep and tried to remember if he'd ever felt so certain about anything. The 7-day deadline loomed in the back of his mind, but it didn't carry the same weight anymore. He hadn't fulfilled a clause. He had surrendered something far more dangerous than control. And for the first time, he wasn't afraid of what that meant. Rowan's stirred eyes slowly opening. You stayed, she said softly. Of course, Elias replied. I didn't think you would. Why not? Because I didn't give you a reason to trust me. You gave me honesty. That's more than most people start with. They shared breakfast in the kitchen, wrapped in silence that wasn't awkward but full. He told her everything he hadn't yet said. The details of the clause, the real threat of losing Biokind, the vultures circling the company, the pressure of preserving a legacy he never asked for. Rowan listened, nodding slowly, never interrupting. When he finished, she didn't offer pity. She offered clarity. So the company goes to Evermed if there's no child, yes. But not just any child, one conceived from choice, from intention. Your mother was brilliant, Rowan said. She knew biology, but she believed in meaning. Elias blinked. You don't think it's manipulative, I think it's strategic. And strangely poetic. She smiled. It's not about biology, it's about will. Her choice of words made him pause. Do you think we don't know yet, she said gently. And that's okay. That afternoon, Elias called his legal team. He asked about contingencies. What would happen if the will wasn't met exactly, but the intent behind it had been honored? The lead attorney paused. There is an addendum, she admitted. Your mother left something for you. A handwritten journal sealed, marked for you to open only after love. Elias opened the safe that evening. Inside was a leather-bound book with his mother's initials pressed into the cover. No lock, just a small white card tucked between the first pages. Love is not a task, it read. It is a surrender. If you have come here looking for proof, you've misunderstood me. If you've come here because you know now what I tried to teach you, then I trust you to know what matters most. He turned the page. Her handwriting swept across the lines, calm and strong. When I said a virgin, I didn't mean someone untouched. I meant someone untraded. Someone who still knows how to give without fear, without gain. Someone who says yes, not to avoid loneliness, but because their yes is sacred. Elias sat down slowly. He could see her now clearly, as if she were standing in the room. Her laugh, her fierce belief in intention. Her conviction that the body could be scientific, but love was spiritual. I didn't want you to find a woman. Her words continued. I wanted you to find a mirror. Someone who reflects back to you all that you hide. Someone who doesn't complete you but reveals you. His hands trembled. Rowan walked in as he read the last page. You found it, she said. He nodded. She didn't care about the condition. She cared about the truth. And now I don't care what the lawyers say. Elias, I know what this company means to you. It's not the company he said. It's the reason it was built. And that's never been clearer. Rowan crossed the room and sat beside him. Whatever happens, I'm here, even if the test fails, even if there's no child. Yes, she said simply, because I didn't give myself to an outcome. I gave myself to you. They spent the next day together, not as a countdown, but as a beginning. Elias took her to the mountain trails where he used to hike with his mother. They drank hot cider on the porch, their hands brushing, in casual familiarity. Rowan told him about her dreams finishing school, creating her own greenhouse project, maybe one day teaching. He offered her funding. She refused. I don't want this to be part of a transaction, she said. Then let it be a gift, he replied. Given freely. Like love, exactly like love. That night, he looked at her across the firelight. She was reading his mother's journal fingers, moving across the paper as if tracing memories not hers. He saw the quiet focus, the way she honored even what she didn't fully understand, and he realized that she wasn't just someone who fit the clause. She was someone who would have been enough, clause or not. The next morning day, 7 arrived. The lawyers came. Elias met them in his study. They asked for proof, medical documentation, timelines. There's a possibility, he said. But that's not the point. The clause is specific, they replied. We need certainty. Elias handed them the journal. Read this. And if you still want to take biokind away from me, after that, go ahead. The lawyers left stunned. Rowan stood by the window, watching the sun melt the last of the snow. You didn't try to fight them, I did. Just not the way they expected. And what now? Now we wait for the child, for the answer, for whatever comes next. She turned to him, and for the first time, there was no hesitation in her eyes. "Whatever it is, we face it together." He nodded. "Together." By the time the sun dipped beneath the horizon that evening, Elias felt like the weight of 7 days had compressed into the space of one breath. He had thought the moment of decision would come with noise arguments, courtroom drama, or boardroom betrayals. But instead it arrived in silence. After the lawyers left, no decisions had been made, no signatures, no announcements. Just a thin layer of unspoken tension in the air like snow that hadn't yet touched the ground. Rowan walked beside him down the wooded trail that wound behind the greenhouse. Their fingers brushed but didn't intertwine. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, but it was thick with thoughts unsaid. She finally stopped near a tall pine and turned to face him. "You're scared," she said. He looked at her. "Aren't you?" "Yes. But I'm not afraid of the company. I'm afraid of what happens if you give up." "I'm not giving up." "Then why haven't you fought harder?" He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it. She waited. He finally said, "Because for once I don't know what winning looks like." "Maybe it's not winning you need," she said. "Maybe it's surrender." "To what?" "To the life you never planned for." Her words struck deeper than anything he'd heard from a lawyer or investor. That night, as snow returned in slow spirals outside, Elias sat on the edge of the bed and read his mother's journal again. Rowan slept nearby, her breath steady her presence, grounding him in a way that defied logic. The journal pages rustled like leaves in wind. One line stopped him cold. "You've spent your whole life protecting legacy. But what you never understood was that legacy is not what we leave behind. It's what we choose to live now." He closed the book and stared into the dark. Tomorrow wasn't just day 8. It was the first day without the will's power hanging over him. He had failed in legal terms. There was no confirmation of conception, no proof. But there was Rowan, and there was choice. Morning broke in pale gold, casting long shadows across the wooden floors. Elias brewed coffee, added cream to Rowan's mug. Without asking, he'd memorized how she liked it. She joined him on the porch, wrapped in a wool blanket. "Did you sleep?" she asked. "No," I read. "Anything good?" "Just words I wish I had read earlier." They didn't speak about the company. Not at first. They talked about her dream greenhouse, about his mother's favorite tree, about how strange it felt to feel free, even with nothing certain. Then, as if summoned by thought, his assistant called. The lawyers had reconvened. They had read the journal. The board had requested one final meeting. Noon. Elias didn't want to go, but Rowan said, "You should see it through. Not for them, for yourself." He entered the boardroom 3 hours later, wearing no tie, no armor, just himself. The board sat stiff and expectant. His lead counsel stood. "There's a path forward," she said. "The board agrees to defer the final transfer for 90 days. If conception is confirmed, you retain control. And if not, we renegotiate the company's future with a new structure. You lose majority, but retain scientific direction. You will still be able to lead biokines research. You'll still have a voice." Elias paused. "And what about my mother's will?" "She gave us discretion. Her journal changed minds." One board member, an older woman with a soft voice, added, "She didn't want us to judge you by deadlines. She wanted us to witness your heart." It was the most human thing Elias had ever heard in that room. He signed the papers without tension, not because he had won, but because he had released the fear of losing. When he returned home, Rowan met him on the steps. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Like something ended," he said, and something else began. They spent the evening cooking together a simple stew from her grandmother's recipe. She spilled the thyme. He burned the bread. They laughed. The next morning, she placed a white envelope on the kitchen table. He looked at her questioningly. "Open it," she said. Inside was a test, faint lines, barely there, but there. He blinked, then looked up. She nodded. "We don't know for sure yet, but it's possible." He swallowed. "You should have waited to tell me." "Why? Because it changes everything." "No," she said, taking his hand. "It changes nothing. I told you I chose you before I knew, and I still do." He pulled her into his arms, this time not because of fear or need, but because love is the safest place a person can fall. Over the next weeks, life slowed. They found rhythm, simplicity. Elias returned to the lab with a clearer vision. He invited Rowan to contribute to the greenhouse expansion. At first, she declined. Then he asked again, not as a favor, but as an equal. She agreed. Their evenings were filled with books, soft music, and firelight. No grand declarations, just presence. On the 30th day, they visited his mother's grave. The sky was clear, the wind sharp. Rowan knelt first, placing a small white flower on the stone. Elias stood beside her. "I didn't understand what she wanted," he said, "until I met you. I think she knew you had to find it on your own. She would have liked you." "I hope so. She would have seen you." Rowan squeezed his hand. "And you," he looked at her. "I see you." That night, Elias wrote his own letter. Not a will, a promise, to a child not yet born. He wrote about legacy, about courage, about love that doesn't ask for conditions. He folded the page and tucked it inside the same journal his mother had left him. Life, he now knew, didn't unfold according to schedule. Love didn't show up with certainty. But when it did show up, it asked only one thing: to be chosen again and again without fear. Rowan read the letter silently, then kissed his forehead. "We're not building an empire," she whispered. "We're building something softer." "What's that, a family?" 3 weeks passed in a kind of quiet rhythm neither Elias nor Rowan had ever known before. The tension of deadlines had dissolved, but in its place was something more delicate: uncertainty wrapped in hope. Each morning brought a little more calm, each night a little more closeness. Elias found himself paying attention to things he once dismissed: the smell of Rowan's shampoo lingering in the hallway, the way she stood on her toes to reach the top shelf, the low hum she made when she focused on her notes. He memorized these things not because he meant to, but because he couldn't help it. Rowan, too, had changed. She spoke more freely, laughed more often. She wore her hair down some days, and when Elias brushed it back from her face, she leaned into his hand like it was the safest place on earth. They didn't speak much about the test. They had decided together to wait for confirmation. "Hope without pressure," Rowan said. "It's a better kind of hope." Elias agreed, though he found it harder with each passing day to pretend he wasn't desperate to know. Not for the company anymore, for them, for what they might become. Then on a Tuesday morning filled with snow and soft light, Rowan fainted. It happened so suddenly one moment. She was stirring tea the next. She was on the floor, her cup shattered beside her. Elias rushed to her side, heart thundering. She came to quickly blinking up at him. "I'm okay," she whispered, but he was already carrying her to the car. At the clinic, the nurse was calm routine, but Elias couldn't breathe. until the doctor entered with a clipboard and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "She's stable," the doctor said, "and the baby?" Elias asked. Rowan's fingers tightened around his. The doctor hesitated. "There was a pregnancy," he said carefully. But it didn't hold. Rowan didn't react at first. Her eyes remained fixed on the ceiling. Elias couldn't speak. The silence that followed was thicker than anything he'd ever endured. When the doctor left, Rowan sat up slowly. "So that's it," she said. "No heartbeat, no child, no legacy." "Don't," Elias said. "You don't have to carry this alone." "But I do," she said quietly. "It was inside me." "And you were inside me," he said. "Long before that." She looked at him, eyes brimming but unfallen. "Are you angry?" "No." "Disappointed?" "Not in you, never in you." She took a breath, held it, then let it go. "I feel empty." "Then let me help fill you back up," he said, not with plans or promises, just presence. That night they didn't speak much. They lay together not in intimacy, but in grief. Elias held her the way his mother used to hold him when he cried over scraped knees and broken toys. She didn't sob, she didn't tremble, but her fingers clung to his shirt as if he were the only anchor in a sea that had pulled her under. The next morning Rowan was gone. Elias searched the house, the greenhouse, the trail, but she had left nothing but a note on the kitchen table. "I need to remember who I was before this, before the hope, before the loss. I'll come back if I can still be myself beside you. Please don't look for me." Elias stood in the empty kitchen and felt for the first time what true helplessness was. Not failure, not loss, just absence. He honored her request. He didn't track her down, didn't call, didn't send anyone. But each morning he made 2 cups of tea, one for him, one left untouched. Weeks passed, then months. The company stabilized. The board respected his quiet leadership. BioKind didn't grow rapidly, but it grew meaningfully. He put energy into developing therapies Rowan had once dreamed about. He named one of the protocols Hail, but her absence never softened. It stayed sharp in him, a reminder that love doesn't come with guarantees. Then on a rainy evening in late spring, she returned. He didn't hear a knock, just turned around in the kitchen, and there she was, soaked, pale eyes, tired but strong. "Hi," she said. "Hi," he breathed. "You look awful," she said. "You look like home," he replied. She stepped closer. "I thought leaving would help me grieve, but all it did was remind me who I wanted to grieve with. And who was that you?" He exhaled, shaky and raw. "I thought I lost you." "You didn't," she said. "You found me. That night, when you didn't run. I didn't want to lose what we had." "You didn't," she said. "You just had to let it change." She pulled something from her coat pocket. A small wooden carving, a tiny tree carved from driftwood. "I made it for the one we lost," she said. "But I think it belongs here, with us." He took it gently, his fingers brushing hers. "I want to start again," he said. "Not with expectations, not with pressure, just with today." "Then start with this," she whispered, and kissed him. Not with urgency, not with fear, just with the kind of tenderness that says, "I've come home." That night they didn't talk about the future. They watched the rain. They held hands under a blanket. And in the silence, they forgave the timeline, the hope, the heartbreak. Not because it didn't matter, but because love had survived it. That was the twist his mother never wrote into the will. That healing was not just possible, it was inevitable when love was real and chosen, not earned. Summer arrived slowly in Jackson Hole. The snow melted from the hills like secrets finally willing to be released. green returned to the world one leaf at a time. In the garden behind the BioKind greenhouse, Rowan knelt in the dirt, planting a new section of healing herbs. Her hands were steady, her face calm, and beside her Elias placed a small wooden plaque into the soil. It read hope. Not in memory, not in grief, but in reverence. Rowan was not pregnant. There had been no second miracle, no sudden confirmation that life had grown again inside her. And yet neither of them felt empty. The child they had lost had not taken love away. It had left something behind, a blueprint, a bond, a beginning. In the months since her return, their lives had changed not in dramatic waves, but in quiet layers. Elias had stepped back from executive roles and focused on lab work and research, the place he loved most. Rowan had taken over the greenhouse project, building a new program for genetic plant studies focused on non-invasive therapies. They didn't rush marriage, didn't try to recreate old milestones. They just showed up for each other every day with eyes open and hands unguarded. On the 1-year anniversary of Elias's mother's death, they stood beneath the old tree she once loved, a tall red pine that had somehow survived 3 wildfires and a lightning strike. They hung the driftwood carving of the tiny tree from a low branch. Elias held Rowan's hand. "She would have loved you," he said. "She taught me to look for someone who wouldn't complete me, but would reflect the parts of me I never understood." "You reflect mine too," Rowan said, "even the parts I used to hide." "Do you regret anything?" he asked. She looked up at the tree. "Only that I didn't believe sooner that love could be quiet and still be real." "I used to think love was a prize," Elias said. "Something to earn, something to chase. But you showed me it's not a prize, it's a place." That evening they lit a fire and read together in silence. The world outside didn't care that they had failed the will's original terms. There was no child, no miracle headline. But there was something greater, a legacy not born of obligation, but of choice. And that choice made again and again, without coercion, without fear, was what held them together. When Rowan finally curled into his side and whispered, "I'm ready now," he didn't ask what she meant. He just kissed the top of her head and said, "Me too." They didn't know if a family would come. They didn't know if time would be kind. But they knew this. They had already created something rare, something pure, not untouched, but untraded. A love born not from necessity, but from trust. And in a world that often demanded proof, they had learned that presence was enough, that choosing each other fully and freely again and again was more powerful than any contract or condition. That night, as the fire burned low and the stars emerged without ceremony, Elias whispered into the quiet, "You were never the test, Rowan. You were the answer." She smiled, eyes closed. "And you," she said, "were the home I didn't know I'd been looking for." Sometimes the most powerful stories aren't the ones filled with triumph, but the ones built on healing, on patience, on choosing love without guarantees. And in their small corner of the world, they had proven that the purest kind of love isn't defined by firsts, but by the courage to begin again together.